our lesson number 2, we are going to talk about the principles of social work. As we all know, social workers promote social justice, social change with and on behalf of clients. So when we say clients, it is used inclusively to refer to individuals, families, groups, organizations, and communities. The discipline of social work is guided by basic principles or rules of action. We need to remember that the mission of the social work profession is rooted in a set of core values. These values, embraced by social workers throughout the profession's history, are the foundation of social workers' unique purpose and perspective. And for that, we have said that social workers have unique purpose and perspective. This includes the following: the service, the social justice, the dignity and worth of the person, importance of human relationships, integrity, and competence as well. So these are the principles of social work. So number 1, we have the acceptance of people as they are. I think you have heard of this, right? Napag-aralan na natin to sa ating counseling. This is also one of the principles of counseling. Acceptance. So when we say acceptance, it means recognizing that people have strengths and weaknesses, capacities, and limitations. So we need to understand that every people is unique. We need to accept them as they are, because every people that you meet, every now and then, every day, they have their own capacity, they have their own limit, they have their own strength and weaknesses as well. Number 2, we have the participation of the client in problem solving. So again, napag-usapan na natin to sa ating counseling. So this is also one of the principles of counseling. You need to remember that the client should participate in problem solving. So you are there to guide, right? But always remember that kung sino ang magsasolve ng problem, si client iyon. Hindi si counselor, hindi si social worker. So, the client and the worker is in a professional helping relationship while in the problem-solving process. The client should participate in providing necessary information about himself and his situation. Of course, how are you going to solve the problem if you don't know the situation, if you don't know the problem, right? Of course, if you know the problem, you'll be able to know how are you going to solve it. If you know the problem, you'll be able to plan how are you going to solve it. Number 3, we have the self-determination as the right of the client. So, what do we mean by self-determination? So, it is the process by which there is a control in your own life. Nabanggit natin yung salitang control. So, kapag sinabi natin control, you have the right to determine your own problem. You have the right to address your own problem. Kaya nga sinabi natin self-determination as the right of the client. So, kapag ganon, the client and the social worker should help each other. Kaya nga sa number 2, di ba, there is a participation. And then sa number 3, we have the self-determination. So, dito sa self-determination, si client ang hahanap kung ano ba talaga ang pinagmulan ng problema. And siya rin ang hahanap kung paano natin ma-address yung problem na iyon. So, tutulungan siya ni social worker by addressing or by providing resources to solve that problem. Number 4, we have the individualization of clients. So just like number 1, we have the acceptance of people as they are. So individualization is like uniqueness. We should always think that every person is unique. and must be treated as human being with his personal differences. Katulad ng number 1 natin, acceptance. Every people have their own weakness, every people have their own strengths, every people have their own limits. Okay? Number 5, we have the confidentiality. So, this is a functionality and professionalism in the helping process. So, this signifies the trust between the social worker and the client. So, dito sa confidentiality, kapag sinabi nating trust, this ensures that the problem will be effectively approached to aid in its resolution. So, kaya nga hiningan natin siya ng participation and self-determination for him to entrust his problem with you, right? Because as a social worker, you are going to provide him or her the program on how to solve his or her problem. Number 6, we have the worker's self-awareness. So, the social worker must always be aware that he is in a professional helping relationship in which the goal is for the benefit and development of the client and not his own. So, kailangan laging tatandaan ni social worker na lahat ng ginagawa niya para sa client niya, hindi para sa sarili niya. Siguro may mga na-encounter na kayo na there's a problem arise wherein lahat ng advantages kinukuha ni worker or ni social worker, ni counselor, or kung sino man iyon. Parang tinitake advantage na yung opportunity para sumikat siya, tinitake advantage na yung opportunity para ma-promote siya, right? So, as a social worker, you always put in your mind that you are in a helping profession wherein you need to put your client first before yourself. And lastly, we have the client-worker relationship. You need to be objective. Having a purpose and a goal are the guiding idea of this principle. So, this relationship is directed to reach a certain goal through helping process. So, lagi nating nababanggit yung objectivity. So, ano nga ulit yung objectivity? This is the worker or the social worker is not influenced by personal feelings or opinions in considering and representing facts. This is a client-worker relationship. You should always have a goal, and your goal is to help the client. Your goal is to help him or her process the problem within his or her self. We are now going to move with these roles, functions, and competencies of social workers. So, number 1, we have the social worker as a communicator. So, as a communicator, this may include assessments of new clients or summaries of progress. So, if you are a communicator or as a social worker, you need to have the communication skills, whether it is verbal, non-verbal, or written. Because this is the very crucial part, especially when you are interviewing your client. Number 2, we have the social worker as a counselor. So, this is one of the significant roles of social worker. So, this is an advantage for you because we already talked about what counseling is and how are you going to do a counseling. So, counseling is undertaken to help people cope with stress, handle a crisis, or deal with a changing life circumstances. Remember that the counselor can help the client to modify the client's behavior. You can, as a counselor, you can alter relationship patterns and change the client's socialization and change the client's thinking. How are you going to do that? Paano ba natin siya gagawin? Of course, katulad ng nabanggit natin before, you are going to present different perspective to your client. You need to present different thinking to your client. In that way, you are already altering his perspective. You are already altering his mind. You are already altering his relationship pattern. Number 3, we have the psychotherapist. So these are the specially trained and certified professionals which help resolve symptoms of mental disorders, psychosocial stress, and other difficulties coping. So when we say psychotherapists, these are already specially trained, which means they have advanced learning. So when we say advanced learning, they have finished a master's degree or doctorate degree because they are already certified to do a therapy. Next, we have the advocate. So when we say advocate, this refers to a person who fights for the rights of others. So siguro na narinig nyo na yung mga, ano ba yung advocacy mo? Right? Kasi kapag sinabi natin advocacy, you are fighting for the rights of others. Siguro narinig nyo na yung mga advocacy for women, advocacy for cancer patients, advocacy for domestic violence, which mean you are fighting for the rights of others. Next here I have is broker. So as a broker, you make use of referrals to link a family or person to a needed resource. So in a general term, kapag sinabi nating broker, you are a person or firm who arranges transactions between a buyer and a seller. Siguro narinig yung mga salitang broker sa mga nagtitinda ng mga bahay. Right? So, sino ba yung broker mo? Mga ganon. Which means para silang sales manager or sales agent. So, in our lesson, if you are called as a social worker as a broker, which means you are linking a family to a needed resource. So, paano iyon? For example, meron kang isang client wherein that client needs financial assistance with his or her education. So what are you going to do is you are going to find a link or resource kung saan pwede siyang kumuha ng scholar niya. So para ka nagiging mediator within with that two, within the client and the scholarship program. Number 6, we have the case manager. So the goal of social work case management is to increase access to care and ensure that good quality care is provided. So, case management in social work is different from other health case management. So, with this one, you are providing planning, locating, securing, and monitoring the quality of services for people who are unable to do this. So, sa mga taong hindi kayang gawin iyon because they have for physical health, they are mentally disturbed, or they are already elderly person, or children with disabilities, or children who are homeless. So, di ba sa mga nabanggit natin, for physical health, or mentally disturbed, elderly people, children with disabilities, and children who are homeless. Of course, they cannot do the planning, they cannot do the locating, and they cannot do the securing and monitoring. So, as a social worker, ikaw ang gagawa nun para sa kanila. Saan ba sila pwedeng pumunta? So, ano bang pwede nilang gawin? So, you are being the case manager. Number 7 here is social worker as educator. So, as an educator, you provide information to people about the availability of resources, what to do to avail of that needed social services, conduct training programs, provide information, and to discipline children, and many more. So, kapag sinabi nating educator, isa ka na rin teacher. As a social worker, you are also a teacher because you need to provide information, you can conduct seminar, You can provide information sa mga, yun nga, yung previous example ko, for example, family planning. You are educating people. And also, you can discipline children. So, ano bang ginagawa ng isang teacher sa loob ng classroom? Kapag makulit si student, you need to discipline your students, right? So, you can do that as an educator. Next, I have a social worker as a facilitator. So, the role of a facilitator is to engage in a communication with the client for planning and decision-making in attainment of his goal. So, for this one, the social worker can make use of coaching as a tool to help the lonely, insecure, and socially immature adolescents. So, what do we mean when we say facilitator? So, if you are a facilitator, that means you are the one who makes the action or process easy or make it easier. Right? Kaya nga sinabi natin dito, you are helping the client for the planning and decision making for the attainment of his goal. So as a facilitator, you are going to make the plan or the goal easier for your client by helping him, by providing information, by helping throughout the session, right? So you are facilitating him para makamit niya yung goal. And lastly, we have here organizer. So the social worker's role as organizer could be used to affect policy changes within the social agency. Of course, if you are a social worker, you are after with the change. So, one type of community social work practice is community organization. Kaya nga meron tayong goal na community change. So, as a social workers, you can be a community builders or community organizers. So, what does it mean? So, kapag nasa isang community ka, it's either you will help them to be one, right? Para kang nag-i-implement ng isang policy sa pinupuntahan mong community. So, for example, siguro dito yung mga nagpupunta sa mga indigent people, right? So, kapag napupunta ka sa mga indigent people, that is one community. So, in that community, as a social worker, you are going to implement some rules. You are going to implement a change. So, in that way, you are being an organizer because you organize the plan, you implement the plan, and you want to see the change with your plan within the community. So for our lesson number 2, I will end it here. So thank you for listening. If you have any question, do not hesitate to PM me via Telegram. You already know my number, or you can use our messenger chat box. But please remember that you can message me within our office hours. So I am willing to entertain all your possible questions. So have a good day, class. I'll see you again, or I'll meet you again on our next lesson.